There are heightened concerns today about the fate of the more than 100 hostages being held in Gaza. A proposed ceasefire deal including the release of 40 hostages, including women, the elderly, and the ill, in exchange for hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. But the New York Times reported that Hamas says it may not have 40 hostages in those categories, raising fears that more hostages could have died than previously believed either on October 7th or in the succeeding months, because of the conditions there. One of the hundreds of people kidnapped by Hamas on October 7th and still being held is 35-year-old Israeli American Sagui Dekel-Chen. When Hamas raided their kibbutz, Sagui moved his family into a safe room and went out to confront the terrorists. He was captured. Sagui has yet to even meet his baby daughter, born while he's been in captivity. Doesn't know that the rest of his family did, fortunately, because of his heroism, survive in that safe room. So 2 older daughters and his wife. Joining us now is Sagui's father, Jonathan Dekel-Chen, and his stepmother, Gillian Kaye, who's joining us, I believe, from Florida. Welcome to you both. Jonathan,
thank you, Andrew.
First, your reaction to new reporting that Hamas is saying they're not sure they can come up with 40 people in those categories of women, the elderly, the ill. What does that tell you, if they're telling the truth? And well, they won't give names to the Israelis.
Yeah, it has been a concern of ours for quite some time. But I have no faith whatsoever in anything Hamas would say. I would imagine any right-thinking person would have their doubts. That being said, we are from Kibbutz Nir Oz, which was attacked and destroyed on October 7th. So of the 39 remaining hostages from Kibbutz Nir Oz, of the 133, we know already that 12 have already died, their murdered bodies being held by Hamas. And amongst the, we hope, 27 who are still alive, my son, there are older men for sure, and children and women. And so for us, it's a terrifying thought that our extended family, our kibbutz community family, we simply don't know who might still be alive in that group.
And Gillian, talk to us about this and how it affects you, you know, in terms of what you know, what you don't know, and your fear that the word hostages has had a numbing effect on the world, that people don't know enough about the individuals involved, like Sagui.
Well, I'll say in terms of how it's affecting me or affecting us, Elad Katsir, who was just found murdered by Hamas, they just found his body, and understand that he was murdered in captivity in January. He was from Kibbutz Nir Oz. If nothing indicated it, it indicates to us now, it's not that they don't have time anymore. Time's run out. Time has run out for the hostages. We understand it now more than ever. And I am concerned, of course, that both that the world has moved on and has become numb to the issue of the hostages, particularly in light of, and we have to say it out loud, in light of the unbelievable devastation in Gaza. So many people dead, children starving, buildings destroyed and demolished. It is an atrocity, what's happened there. And it is a struggle, but we have to keep doing it, to also hold up the innocent hostages that were taken by Hamas in a murderous terrorist massacre, and who are also starving and sick and dying. So it's a challenge right now, Andrea. I won't say it isn't. And it's heartbreaking. All of it is heartbreaking.
And Jonathan, are you satisfied with what the Netanyahu government is doing and the priority is placing on hostages versus the offensive, the air attacks, and the understandable goal of eliminating Hamas, if it's even possible to do that?
Well, those of us who have lived on the border, in my case, over 40 years, are perfectly aware of the absolute need to eradicate Hamas as a military and governing organization. That is simply a truth, if not just for us on the Israeli side of the border, more so for the people of Gaza, who are living a nightmare. in terms of your question, until recently, there were, not just me, hundreds of thousands, in the aggregate millions of Israelis out in the street demanding that our own government, the Israeli government, do the right thing in terms of negotiating to get our people out alive, and not simply resting on this fantasy that somehow military action alone is going to get my son and the others home safely and alive. It appears that because of a lot of pressure from the Biden administration on Israel, Qatar, and Egypt, that there is a willingness now on the Israeli side to move forward to entertain negotiations. And now we in the world wait to hear what Hamas really wants. Do they want the utter destruction of Gaza, or do they want somehow to discover what state building actually is and move towards a ceasefire, release of the prisoners, and some kind of sanity in Gaza?
Now, there's a new statement that we've received from Dr. Bassem Naim, a member of the political bureau of Hamas in Gaza, translated by our bureau in Jerusalem and in Tel Aviv. And one of the things that he is saying, he's not rejecting what is now on the table. It was being studied by Hamas, and they were waiting for a reaction from Sinwar. It was the most, I guess, militant of the leaders among militants. Sinwar is viewed as the, toughest operator inside Gaza. He's objecting, saying that part of the negotiations is to reach a ceasefire agreement, to have enough time and safety to collect final and precise data on the hostages. So they're denying basically that they know. They've been asked, they have an obligation under the Geneva Conventions, and the Red Cross is supposed to have access to hostages immediately and communications with families from day one. None of that has happened. But there's been no accounting, and that has been one of the objections. But he's also making the point that the life of all humans are precious and priceless, and no one is asking about the thousands of Palestinians, innocents, kidnapped in Israel after October 7th, people arrested, presumably, and there have been false arrests, and we've had plenty of results of that, and that there are people, hostages, who are dead under the rubble with the Palestinians because of the airstrikes. So it sounds like a dodge, but also it's probably likely that some of these hostages may also have been victims of the war.
It is entirely possible, and the hostage families of all sorts are desperate to get the fighting to stop, because we're perfectly aware that every day that the fighting continues, however justified it might be on Israel's side, or however tragic it might be on the Palestinian side, is endangering our loved ones. And therefore, there's an absolute moral and human imperative for all sides to get this done. And the only obstacle right now to getting this done and to get Palestinian lives back in order and our loved ones returned is for Hamas to come to the table. All the other sides are aligned. Qatar, Egypt, the United States, and Israel has been, if not forced, then nudged to come to the table. It's time to stop with these sort of dodging statements, and for the man in the tunnel, Yahya Sinwar, was clearly the decision maker, to do something positive for his people, and not just in the service of a fanatic, murderous ideology that has just brought tragedy, certainly since October 7th.
How is your daughter-in-law doing? And she's got two little ones, 3 and 6, and now a 4-month-old baby.
Avital is the hero in all of this. Gillian and I and many others have been advocating around the world for the hostages, with governments, with parliaments and so on. But Avital and the other wives, children, grandparents who survived October 7th, and certainly those from the kibbutzim along the border, have to completely reconstruct their lives. Nothing was left. They survived by a miracle, and it is just awe-inspiring to see what she's been able to do. And Gillian and I and all the others are completely committed to get their father, their husband back, and to allow this young family to continue its life the way it should be lived.
And finally, did you get any word from Vice President Harris yesterday in your meetings that something might be coming together?
Well, all of the U.S. families, those of us with dual citizenship that we've met with administration officials, and we've sort of kept sacred those internal conversations. What I can say is that from 2 or 3 days after October 7th, it's been extraordinarily reassuring that the U.S. administration has shown us by its deeds, not just by its words, that it is totally committed to getting all of the hostages home, U.S. citizens, non-U.S. citizens, those who might still be alive, and those who have already are already deceased and murdered. So it was another sort of brick in that wall of absolute solidarity from the administration side.
Well, Jonathan Dekel-Chen, and thank you so much, and Gillian Kaye, thank you as well. And our hopes are with you.
Hey everyone, MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.